Racism resilience in prison, 6.5%. The African American community is 6.5% of the total American population. However, the African American community is 40.2% of the prison population. So what do these statistics mean? These statistics show how there is an incarceration bias between those in the African American community and those in other communities. So where did this bias come from? This bias came from President Nixon's declaration of a war on drugs in 1971, as seen here in this graphic. Nixon was able to connect crack with minorities because Nixon started his war on drugs to be able to connect crack with minorities. Nixon wanted to create this connection so he would still have public favor when he started to arrest more minorities. Nixon was able to do this by making the incarceration rate much higher for crack than it was for cocaine. This singled out minorities because cocaine is a very wealthy drug, while crack is a very impoverished drug used by those in the Latino and African American communities. This higher incarceration rate led to more minorities being placed in prisons. And in order to control these minorities, prison officers began to use racial practices such as segregation of race, racial slurs, and violence against inmates in order to scare them into submission. Sadly, these practices are still being used within prisons today. So how does this relate to resilience? Prisoners need resilience in order to survive against the harsh and racist prison environment. So the question must be asked, how are prisoners surviving the harsh and racist environment cultivated within prison? In order to survive racism in prison, prisoners must cultivate resilience by pursuing a higher education. A higher education is funded in three major ways: nonprofit organizations, partnerships with institutions, and government-funded initiatives. All three of these examples offer opportunities for inmates to pursue formal education, such as earning a high school diploma, vocational certifications, associate's degree, bachelor's degree, and even higher levels of education. Like all solutions, there are limitations, and this solution is no exception. The first being limited funds. This is because many prisons experience budget constraints and a lack of financial aid needed for higher education. And many prisons are in need of substantial funding models. The second limitation is security concerns. This is because many prisons are concerned that inmates may misuse educational materials and technologies. And prisons will also need extra security clearance for outside instructors. The third and final limitation is limited incentives for participation of these educational programs from prisoners. This is because educational programs still have a limited opportunities for employment or career advancement upon release, which may impact a prisoner's decision. However, a higher education still cultivates resilience and provides jobs that aren't available to the average prisoner. So why this solution? The first reason is because higher education is already being implemented in today's prisons. The second is because a higher education reduces the violence within prisons. The article Prison Education Program, What to Know, written by Sarah Woods, a reporter at the US News since 2021, explains how education is vital to a healthy prison environment. Ms. Woods supports this claim with a quote, "College prison programs can reduce violence, making facilities safer for both incarcerated individuals and staff. This shows how higher education builds resilience by decreasing violence." The third reason is because it also provides a second chance for inmates. Lois M. Davis proves this with her article, Higher Education Programs in Prisons, What We Know Now and What We Should Focus On Going Forward. She discovers that more than 700,000 incarcerated individuals leave federal and state prisons and have to compete with individuals in those communities for jobs. Lois M. Davis stresses the importance by describing the stakes that inmates face. Being able to land a job can be the difference between going back to prison or being a part of the community once again. A higher education neutralizes these stakes because it removes the stress inside the prison by allowing a prisoners to cultivate resilience against the harsh racist environment, and after release by allowing prisoners to have an economic opportunity. So why is a higher education the best solution? This is because when this problem is looked at through a cultural and economic lens, we can see why a higher education is the best solution towards establishing and cultivating resilience within this harsh prison environment. This is because a higher education protects prisoners, but also rehabilitates inmates by providing a college education, which can greatly assist their well-being once released. This rehabilitation not only helps the community, but also the economy by allowing prisoners to contribute to the economy once more with financial opportunities. A higher education is the best solution because it helps cultivate resilience for prisoners against racism inside a prison, while also helping them become better civilians with a second chance in the form of a college education. How did I use my stimulus material? I used, in their own words, resilience among Haitian survivors of the 2010 earthquake in my background information as a way to define resilience. Then I used Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela as a crucial form of evidence towards proving why forming alliances can extremely help prisoners create resilience. Thank you.
Okay. Arch, did your research go in a different direction than you originally expected?
Yes, because originally I wanted to focus on how forming alliances helped cultivate resilience, but then I realized that there was a better option, which was higher education. Because even though they both focused on the cultural aspect, a higher education focuses on the economic aspect and after release.
Okay, good. And how was your conclusion in conversation with the body of literature or other research sources you examined?
It's actually concurs with what some literature has said. I'm not going to pronounce his name right, but Saka Seung-Ko was once a former inmate who actually took a part and participated in a higher educational programs. And then he became a very well-renowned author who published many autobiographies about how racism severely impaired his life in prison.